Welcome back to the Fantasy Hockey Podcast, Unsustainable Wednesdays, and after many weeks of hot takes and lots of controversial calls, this one I think is actually going to be a tame one from us for once. I don't think we have many big names. Yeah, I don't know if that's possible though. I feel like there's always there's someone that'll find offense to something we say with some kind of player. I don't know, maybe we name your favorite player and you completely disagree with us, which, look, I totally understand. It makes total sense. It hurts me, but I get it. It makes sense. So, you know what? Let's change it up. How about you start off with your first Unsustainably High call of the week?
Sure. My first one is Dominik Kubalik.
Damn it, I knew you'd steal him.
Left wing, right wing, 21%. I actually like him this week because Chicago is one of the only teams that does not play on Thursday. But beyond that, he's basically getting goals and only goals, which is weird. And his shooting percentage is too high, and couple that with the fact that I get that his power play ice time is increasing, but his percentage on that power play is not. So I don't really see him being a long-term hold. I do like that he's getting more minutes, but more minutes for him still lands him at about 15 and change, which isn't a ton. Plus, I do think that he's going to eventually get moved off the top line. It's a matter of when, probably. Although I would like to see him, get even more ice time. But for some reason, it seems like the Blackhawks are not interested in giving him significant ice time for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, his minutes that he's been getting recently aren't that much higher than his season average. So while, yes, they're higher, they're not necessarily that much higher than what he's been seeing all season. Of course, they're better deployment, but just from a net minutes perspective, not that much higher. His IPP is 80%. His on-ice shooting is 16% over the last 14 games. It's madness. It's absolutely... The shots haven't even come up. Like, at least you'd expect the shots to come up a little bit, right? And that hasn't happened. So yeah, I agree with you on Dominik Kubalik. My next one here is someone we talked about a little bit in the week preview, and that's Tony DeAngelo. Defenseman, 73% owned now. Yeah, people have jumped on him very fast here. And to be honest, the entire Rangers team is somewhat unsustainable and really ridiculous. None of it makes any sense. They're relying on a super high shooting percentage and incredible save percentages when their team sucks on defense. It really doesn't make any sense anywhere. And when it comes to Tony DeAngelo in particular, 11% of shooting on the season and 33% of all his points are coming on the power play. So he's extremely reliant on being on that top power play. Is he going to get moved off? Right now, I want to say no. But to be honest, all season, there's been players on the Rangers that I've been like, are they going to get moved off for their deployment? Nah. And then David Quinn comes in and just wrecks it all. And so, who knows? Maybe. So the big thing with Tony DeAngelo to me is paying attention to whether or not he's still getting that power play deployment later on in the season. If, let's say, he starts to slump, pay attention to what's happening on that power play part. The good news is that he's at least playing a very offensive role, getting very high offensive zone starts. But one thing, of course, is that his on-ice shooting percentage has been pretty crazy. And that's just because the Rangers have been crazy. And so Tony DeAngelo is one of those guys who's benefiting from a really good power play, which is fine. That's reasonable if you're on a power play like the Rangers with Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad, and whatnot. But the thing is that he's also coupling that with a high on-ice shooting percentage, and that's just because all the Rangers are shooting very highly. And teams can do this. Teams can keep a high shooting percentage. Remember the Flames from last year? They were that team that we consistently said, look, their shooting percentage is high, be careful. And they never came back down. They were always a high shooting percentage team, and they're finally coming down this year. So can the Rangers do it? Absolutely. And it's kind of far enough into the season where I may believe it. But that is an area where if the Rangers start to see a decrease in shooting percentage, one of the guys that's going to get hurt the most is going to be Tony DeAngelo.
Yeah. As much as I like Zibanejad and Panarin, I don't understand how they're such a high shooting percentage team. So it's
crazy.
I do think it'll. I mean, who knows? They just scored 6 against the Islanders. We're recording this Monday night, so nothing needs to make any sense.
Yep.
But staying on the Rangers for a second, my second one here is Igor Shesterkin.
Yeah.
Goalie 20. This is just like 23%. He's not like people aren't necessarily rushing to the waiver wire to grab him or anything, but I'm just pumping the brakes here. If Georgiev doesn't get Georgiev has to get traded, right? But even if he does,
absolutely.
I don't think that necessarily means Shesterkin is going to be, getting majority starts. He could easily be chopping with Lundqvist, which would actually make some sense. So why are we so hyped on a rookie goal? I mean, I talked about this in the week preview a little bit, but on a rookie goaltender on a bad team who's going to be in a timeshare most likely. It's just not for redraft leagues. It's not that interesting. For keeper, like deep keeper and dynasty leagues, then sure. But in a redraft, I don't understand why people are going after him right now. My last one is, once again, I feel like he shows up on this list like every other week, is Rupe Hintz. Center left wing, 38%. He's been skating less than 14 minutes on average for an entire month now. Shooting percentage on the season is 21%, and his on-ice shooting percentage over the last month is at 14.6%. So it's all too high, and when it comes down, it's going to come down hard. With these numbers, he should probably be more like a 40-point guy. So don't be expecting a 60-point guy, basically.
Yeah, especially with how much they move around the lines and everything. I'm not expecting this to continue at some point. He's good, and I like him long term, but this season at least, I'm not holding out too much hope there. And then let's move into unsustainably low. So who should be doing better here? My first one is Braden Holtby. Yep, we are here again. Goaltender 96% owned. Yet again, we're getting questions about Braden Holtby and what to do with him and what our thoughts are rest of season. And so I'm coming out here. I'm going on a limb to say I think Braden Holtby is a good goaltender and he's going to figure this out, just like he did at the beginning of the season and just like he has in the past. He has the backing of the coach and the GM. The GM went out of his way to say Holtby is our goaltender. He will rebound, in my opinion. I think he's going to be fine. I think this is a little bit of a slump. And on top of that, they were just playing so ridiculously well in front of him for a while, and he was getting so much goal support. It only makes sense that at some point he goes through a little bit of a slump. And I get that Samsonov has been playing really well, but Braden Holtby is your goaltender. He won you a cup. You're going to rely on him, and so they're going to look for him to get the net back. And he does this every season where he goes through. I mean, he did it this season where he kind of goes through these weird little slumps. And right now the slump has been a little bit long, to be fair. It's been about a month. But I have all the confidence. Actually, it has not been a month. It's been, I think, only like 2.5, 3 weeks, something like that. But I totally have confidence that Braden Holtby will figure this out. And one thing to note that a lot of people are actually kind of surprised by, though, is that I was explaining the other day, which is interesting when you go back and look at when Philip Grubauer was in Washington, or just any backup for Washington, and now the same case with Samsonov. The Washington Capitals play much more dangerously in front of Braden Holtby. And what that allows them to do is to be more dangerous on the offensive side as well. So when you look at the backup goaltenders on HockeyViz and look at the threat levels, the backup goaltenders have an easier job on defense, but the Washington Capitals normally aren't as dangerous on offense. Whereas when you look at the Holtby chart, they're not as good on defense, but much better on offense. And part of that is just, this is how they've always played in front of Holtby, is you have a great goaltender on the back end, and you sacrifice a few goals, but you know that he's going to come up with a lot of really good stops, and that allows you to pinch a little bit more, or to just be a little bit more dangerous on offense. And they've done this all along. And so these slumps with Holtby don't really surprise me, because they do play a dangerous game in front of him, and at times it's going to bite him.
Yeah, I'm a little more hesitant on Holtby than you are, but I still have him in a couple of leagues, so hoping for the best there.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do anything. Look, at worst, I think the absolute worst is they split with Samsonov. Yeah. That's the worst, because you're just resting him for the playoffs, right? Washington is the favorite to win the President's Trophy. The truth of the matter is, I think the one area where I'm negative or down on Holtby is that they have a lot of time here to let him figure it out. And so you can play him in a split for a long time here until he gets it back. You don't need to rush Holtby to figure this out, because you're at the top of the standings, you're playing really well. And that's a negative to Holtby, just because there's not that much leash, so to say, in the regular season, where if you're not playing well, why not just put in Samsonov and let him take a rest? And so that's the one negative I do see, is that maybe you might see reduced starts going forward. But for example, in a points league where you're crediting wins and all that, I can't. There's not that many goaltenders that are on a better team at the moment than Braden Holtby.
Yeah. All right, my first one, probably unsurprising to a lot of people, is Anthony Duclair.
Yep, I have him too.
Left wing, right wing, 62%. Getting dropped a lot. I get it. He's had a couple games without being interesting for a change. But he did play 18 minutes in his last game. He's still shooting. He had that one weird game where he played like 13 minutes. But the fact of the matter is, I see Duclair as a pretty high ceiling guy. He's a gamble. He's been a gamble the whole time. I'm not willing to give up that gamble yet. If I were maybe worried about my playoff positioning, I might think about it. But I'm still high enough on Duclair that I think it's worth riding this out a little longer.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only thing that's worrying is perhaps the shots. They've been coming down a little bit, but other than that, I mean, I like everything I'm seeing. The minutes haven't decreased. I still think he can be a 55 to 60 point guy.
I actually might like him a little bit higher than that, depending on how things turn out. But
really, huh?
Yeah. We'll
I
see
think
though.
I think that above that is maybe a little bit high, just because Ottawa in general has been struggling. But I could see it. And that was my last guy. I only had Holtby and Duclair, so I'm gonna let you take the next few for you.
All right, my next one is Victor Arvidsson. I feel like you're going to disagree with me on this, but
Always
left
disagree
wing,
with
right
you.
wing, 67%. His shots are actually starting to come back now. Took a while. I assume he was still working through an injury, but it seems like he's back to a little bit normal. The thing that is sticking out to me the most is his IPP is really low. He's only at 51% on the season compared to 63% last season. I think 65% should be around where he's at, considering the reliance that the Predators had on him to score goals, at least last season. He's still probably their best goal scorer, so it would be nice to see if he can turn some of these shots into a little bit more goals. He's also got a great name. Victor's a great name.
Shocker. I wonder why you think Victor's such a great name.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, my last one is Kevin Hayes, actually. Center, 18%. He's centering the first line with Giroux and Konechny. He's also skating on that top power play unit. And he actually got a power play goal tonight, Monday night. So interesting to see what'll happen. He also skated 20 minutes on Monday night. So this might be a short-term thing, but at 18%, this is like the third time he's shown up as somebody worth taking a look at for the time being until his deployment changes again, which it's going to at some point.
So let's move into sustainably high guys that we think will continue to do well. My first one is a goaltender. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Aaron Dell, goaltender,
Oh no,
12% owned. He's 4-1 in his last 5 starts. He's now started 3 in a row. He might be their answer here in the short term until they trade for Georgiev or Francouz or whoever the hell they end up trading for. I'm assuming they're going to probably try to trade for somebody here, but they're in a tough spot
you'd
because
think.
of their cap. It's not as easy as it
Yeah.
seems. But that being said, Aaron Dell at 12% owned is extremely interesting. It seems like Jones is out. I don't know how you could want to start Jones right now. I'm assuming that Aaron Dell is going to get a very long leash here. And for 12%, what I think is a decent Sharks team in front of him when they do well, and they've been playing well recently, I like him. I really like him as an option. I like him more than Shesterkin. I like him more than Blackwood. I like him more than a few of these guys out here. They're starting to kind of pick up some steam. I like Dell a lot. He's a potential actual starter on a team that could have a little bit of a run here at the end. Maybe not enough for playoffs, but could have a good run.
Yeah, I don't know how much I like. I don't know how much I like the Sharks, but I guess we'll see what they can do.
I mean, really, if you look at the Sharks, the biggest problem for the Sharks was goaltending this whole season. Not to say that they were great defensively; they've also had defensive woes, but goaltending was what tanked them all the time. They'd give them goal support, and still you're having Martin Jones let in, 5 or whatever. So I think that if Aaron Dell can give them a little bit better goaltending in the back end, I think he could still get some wins at least. Maybe not the greatest save percentage in the world. He's a 910 at the moment, but you're at least getting the Martin Jones effect of wins and probably a better save percentage than what Jones has been getting recently. But again, I think the thing with Aaron Dell is I think right now what he's doing is sustainably high, but I would not be surprised if it just fell off a cliff at some point entirely.
Yeah. Okay. My first one is Ilya Kovalchuk. Left wing, right wing, 26%. I feel like he's just the guy to be talking about right now on this show for some reason. There's not really a lot to dislike in his game. He's playing top line, top power play. That's probably indefinite until Gallagher comes back. Even when Gallagher comes back, it looks like he'll be second line, top power play. So really not that big of a decrease in value. Yeah, I mean, I have him in a few leagues now. He's shooting, he's hitting, his ice time's up, his power play percentage is up. I think he's worth a risk. 26%, worth a flyer. If he doesn't work out, he doesn't work out. Not a big deal.
Yeah, why not? I mean, I picked him up in hourly. And one thing, I sent you a tweet today. Remember, we're recording this Monday night, and they actually had him out for the last 90 seconds while they were up 2-0 defending. And that says a lot. And he was out there for OT the other day. They're trusting him a lot. He's definitely gaining the confidence of the coaching staff. So that's promising for him going forward. So it's like you said, it's worth a gamble at the moment. My next guy here is Vincent Trocheck, center, 55% owned. I did not expect to be talking about him again this season, but here he is. So, to be fair, his last few weeks have been insane and actually quite unsustainable. It's his season totals that are pretty in line. Like, he's finally caught up to where you'd almost expect Trocheck to be. He's on a 70-point pace on the season. Over the last few weeks, he's on a 100-plus point pace. His shots are back up almost to normal over the last few weeks. I would expect him to be more of a 70-ish point pace guy, not the 90-plus that he's been over the last 30 days. I think around 70-ish plus, I can totally see. And if he continues to play like this, I could see some good stuff out of him. He was available in our most competitive league. There's a good chance he's available in a lot of your leagues. And it might be worth taking a look at him because his peripherals are pretty solid too.
Yeah, the thing that I think is going to hold him back is power play.
Yeah, of course.
But
That's the big thing.
I don't know if he's going to be 70. I think more like 60, 65, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I do like the shots are there, thankfully.
Yeah, I mean, if he gets to like 65, 70, though, or even 60, 65, in some leagues, that's really worth it just because of the peripherals alone.
Yeah. Speaking of peripherals, my next one is Blake Coleman.
Ooh.
Left wing, right wing, 49%. I mean, he's a true multi-cap monster right now. Over the last month, he's on a 357 shot pace. Yeah. And a 264 hit pace. Yeah.
He thinks he's Ovechkin or something.
Hits. He thinks he's Brady Tkachuk. Those are Tkachuk numbers. He's with the hits. I mean, he's yeah. I don't know. The thing is, he still gets defensive zone deployment, which actually means he gets blocks. He's on a 62 block pace too. I mean, he gives you everything except for power play. He's not on the power play at all. But
tragic.
Unfortunately, for that. Beyond that, he's pretty good for everything else. He's not going to be a big point guy. He's probably like a 40-point guy, maybe a little more with all these shots lately. But the fact that he can put up these types of numbers is going to make him valuable in a lot of leagues. In the same leagues that you'd have a guy like Brady Tkachuk valuable in, except you're not going to get the PIMs from Coleman.
Yeah. And my next guy here is Bo Horvat. Maybe not a 100-plus point guy, obviously. I think that's fair to assume. But I can reasonably see 70-plus. Yep. Reminds me of Trocheck in many ways. This new line that he's on has really been clicking, and they're the second best Corsi for percentage line on the team, whereas before Bo Horvat's line was kind of lacking in that, and that hurt Bo Horvat because he was oftentimes playing a pretty defensive role, even though they didn't really want him to. They just didn't control play, and so because they didn't control play, he inevitably played more defensive role. And now he's playing this more offensive role, and it's been really working out for him. He reminds me a lot of Trocheck in that he's a little bit unsustainable, maybe a little bit more than a bit. But he's unsustainable, but there's a lot of really good underlying things there that when you look at it, you say, look, okay, maybe he's not the guy he's been, but he's someone who could be very serviceable going forward and fill a need on your team, especially in a points league.
Yeah. Yeah, Hovart's all right. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not in love with him. But
I traded him for Barzell a while ago, and I think it's worked out mostly.
He's kind of inconsistent is the one thing I don't like about him. All season he's been a little bit, has a few good weeks, then has a few bad weeks. That's kind of been where he's at. But over the last few, he's been much more consistent, and I've been liking that. And so I think right now in a points league or a standard Yahoo Cats league, I could see him being worth it. I might want him over a guy like PLD just because of consistency's sake right now. And those two guys are somewhat similar, I think, Pierre-Luc Dubois and Bo Horvat. Maybe not from a peripheral standpoint, from a point standpoint, they are kind of similar and interchangeable, I think, as streamers, depending on who's doing better or worse.
Yeah, in a points league.
In a points league, or even like,
league,
for example, in my situation, I own Pierre-Luc Dubois, and I've done this swap for Horvat thing because no one wants either one for whatever reason in a standard league, and it's just because I have hit so short up in other areas, and I have all the peripherals short up in other areas that all I'm really looking for from that center slot is points.
Yep. All right, my last one here is Jamie Benn, center left wing, 90%. Now this is for Cats leagues. He's not. I think the points are just gone at this point.
I was very ready to yell at you.
But he is shooting, he's back to his volume shooting self, which is nice. He's shooting over 3 shots a game for the last month on a 267 shot pace. He's hitting a ton. He's on a 232 shot pace over that same time. These are like among the best numbers in the leagues. And if you're in a blocks league, he's one of the highest blocking forwards as well with a 73 block pace. He had 75 last season, so that's not like crazy or anything. Or rather, he was on a pace for that. He had 71. But The thing that I like that is a little bit encouraging, they're still doing that like split power play thing, but he's actually cashing in a little bit. We're seeing some power play points from him, which is a nice change. So if that keeps up, it'll boost his value enough to finally not hate the fact that you drafted him, basically. But the fact that we're seeing over 3 shots a game and over 3 hits a game, or around 3 hits a game, is really, really good for bangers leagues.
I mean,
He's actually ranked 70th or so in our full banger league. So he's got some value.
yeah, he's got some value. I mean, you probably didn't draft him that high either this year because of the slump from last year. So
Well,
you're
if you
probably
draft
good.
him that's like a 6th round pick or so.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, I'm still not thrilled. I don't know. I would trade him away right now if I owned Jamie Benn. I think. Just saying, that'd be my take. I'd sell. That's what I'd do. Okay, let's move on to Sustainably
I'd
Low,
buy.
where Jamie Benn should be. My first Sustainably Low guy here is Phil Kessel. Can we agree now that he's not worth it? Can we agree? Or do you disagree with me
We
still?
still have him in a points league, so
I mean, I just don't like him. This is a whole Arizona thing. When you put Taylor Hall on the same exact spot last week, it's the same thing. It's a system. It's not necessarily that Phil Kessel's a terrible player. It's a system thing. 47-point
got 6
pace.
points in his last 7 games. Not terrible.
Oh,
Not that bad.
forget about the last 7 games. A 47-point pace over the last 30 days, and the minutes are coming down. Like, look, he keeps scoring these like little spurts, but if you look at it from a longer standpoint, he's just not there. His shots are way down from last year, way down, and a lot of his value came from goals. His shooting percentage is fine for Arizona standards. It's not fine in general because it's like 8.5, but for Arizona standards, 8.5 is fine, and that's not that bad. I mean, what's his upside there? 9.5 shooting percentage. Cool. It's not that much. And on IPP and the on-ice shooting percentage front, he's fine there too. On-ice shooting percentage is around 9.5. That's normal for Arizona, and his IPP is pretty much right in line. He's, to me, like I said on the holiday special, and I think I'm going to keep reiterating it. You probably disagree with me, but I think he's a 45 to 50 point guy. And, it could go lower than that if things go
60,
wrong.
but we'll see.
You still think 55 to 60?
Yeah,
What? In what
Yeah.
universe?
it's not that far off where he is right now.
I mean, it's pretty far off.
I don't know.
It's quite. He's currently on the season on a 46-point pace. To get to 55 to 60,
I mean pace for the rest of the season. I don't mean
rest
he's
of
going to get to
season?
55
Nah.
to 60.
I still think he's 45, 50 for the rest of the season. Okay,
Yeah.
who's your next bad take? Go for it. Go.
I don't have any more. I did my 3 already.
Oh, that was Sustainably Low. I moved into Sustainably Low, sir.
Oh, you did? Of
I
course.
did. You're
my
behind.
first one.
You're behind on the times here. See,
Well, that
you
was
can't
not my
trust.
next one. It's my first one.
You see, you can't trust
first
what
one.
you can't trust what Brandon says around here.
You misled me. You said my next one. I didn't have a next one.
That is
one.
true. I did do that.
My first one is Sami Vatanen.
What?
Yeah, he's off power play 1. And he's got no points in his last 5 or 6 games as a result, which is not too surprising. That said, I'm still holding him in a bunch of leagues. I'm not really interested in dropping him yet, but this is one of those deals that he needs to be able to get back on top power play because that's where his points are going to come from. Yeah, he was on a 23 power play point pace for the month, but if he's not going to be playing power play, and why would you stop anyway? I don't know why this decision was made to move him off top power play when he's been playing so well, but yeah, it's coming with a little bit of a decrease in ice time lately as well, which is not welcome. And as a result, we're seeing a lot of his other numbers drop. I don't know that this will be a long-term thing, but it is annoying for the short term. And the fact that he's only 20% means that in a lot of leagues, you could probably drop him and have him still be around when you need him back.
I wouldn't hold him.
You would hold him? Or
I
would
would
not.
I would not hold him. I agree with him being
still hold him
sustainably
for
low,
now.
but I don't think I'd hold him. Unless you're in first place and can sacrifice it, I guess, just because the odds of him going up are probably high back up to top power play. But
It's hard to replace guys like that
It
that
is.
have that kind of upside.
yeah, it's hard to find people like that.
Who are you going to drop him for? I don't even know. I don't even know who's comparable on the waiver wire in most leagues.
Maybe
Ronick, I would do that, but
Ronick,
beyond
yes. Ronick, Lindell, not anymore. Klingberg's healthy, so I wouldn't do Lindell. Huh? Yeah, I guess maybe he's worth holding. I don't know. Whatever. Let's move on to my next one here. John Gabriel Pajot, center, 71% owned. Still really high minutes, and that's I think why we're seeing a lot of questions of what's going on with Pajot. We see a lot. I've seen a lot of things on Twitter of what's going on with Pajot. Why is he not producing? What's wrong? The truth is, nothing's wrong. What was happening before was wrong. The minutes were high, but because he was playing a very kind of defensive role. And on top of that, he was always unsustainable from an on-ice shooting percentage and shooting percentage standpoint. Both of those things were pretty big. And now pretty much offense is evaporated for him. Largely, like I said, because of that defensive deployment, his on-ice shooting percentage is also dropped now. Lots of power play time is a big plus, but he's just not factoring in on anything. It's kind of like that Kadri thing where you're on top power play, cool, but you just don't really get in on anything. And on top of that, Ottawa's not very good on the power play, the worst in the league, by quite a margin. So there's not much to factor in on in general, and his offensive zone starts are in the 40s. So when you look at a guy like Pajot, he's been this in his career. What we saw at the beginning of the season was an anomaly to what John Gabriel Pajot has been his entire career. It's 71% owned, in my opinion, for a center like John Gabriel Pajot is ridiculously too high. Given the types of centers that are out on the wire right now, I would absolutely have a Bo Horvat over John Gabriel Pajot. I would absolutely, in a heartbeat, have a Trocheck over John Gabriel Pajot. There's a lot of centers that I could name right now that I would rather have over him.
So to follow it up, should I go with a 71% owned guy or a center?
That's a good question. Do you have both? You do have both. Obviously.
I have one of each.
Duh.
I'll do the 71%.
Let's do 71%.
My next Sustainably Low is Ryan Pulock. Second time he showed up here, actually.
Yep.
I still like him a lot in full banger leagues. If you have blocks, he kind of fills stat sheets well with hits, blocks, and shots, and we'll get like okay points. But he's not power play one, and that's just something that's so easy to point to for somebody a defenseman especially to not be able to get points. If they're not on a power play one, we've said this a million times, it's very hard to break. Even 45 points is not broken by very many defensemen that aren't power play one throughout a season. So I think that he's going to be like a 35-ish point guy if he can't get power play one back. But he's got the rest of the peripherals are in like decent shape, especially hits and blocks. So there's a little bit of value there, and there is the possibility that he winds up back on top power play, but 71% is just too high. There's better options in especially in standard leagues.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's similar to what we talked about with Pajot, right? If there's better options, and really the thing with Pajot to me, and how you were talking about, is really just upside. Is when you have a guy that is that low, you're going for one of two things. You're going for either a high floor, like that's what Jacob Trouba is in some points leagues, for example, a very good floor that's going to get you 1.5 points every night, and have a decent ceiling when they do get points. But more than anything, you hold Trouba for the floor, or you go for highest upside possible in that pickup in that streamer spot. And John Gabriel Pajot doesn't really fill either of those, and that's what you look for normally in a free agent pickup. My next one here is Jeff Carter, center, left wing, right wing, 17%. The only reason I put him on here is because I've seen a lot of optimistic talk about him, and I want to quell that early. To me, he's a 40 to 45 point guy, and that's it. No power play time. Shots are honestly the only good thing about Jeff Carter and the triple eligibility. Other than that, I'm staying away, even honestly when the Kings have a good schedule, personally. Unless you really, really need shots. If you're fine in shots, what you're looking for is
decent
points.
Hits too.
No, he doesn't.
Yes, he does. Take a look.
Points?
He's at hit per game at least.
Oh, hits. I thought you said points. My bad.
Oh, no, not points.
I mean, a hit per game, fine. But
Shots
again,
and hits.
But the thing is, if you're going for hits, right? Like, if what I want is hits, I don't need Carter. I'm going to go for somebody else. I mean, if you need the shots, then sure, Carter actually becomes that good. To me, Carter is a shot guy, and then hits are just an upside. But I'm not going to go to Carter.
Yeah.
Hits aren't going to be what sways me.
Right. No, not strictly. Just to cover a couple of categories decently.
Yeah. You're just trying to cover your Carter.
Yeah,
love.
I have him in a couple of leagues, but mostly because I've been too lazy to move him out.
Yeah.
But, yeah. All right, my last one here is William Karlsson. Center 77%. I don't understand why he's 77%. We're looking at a guy who's going to be, in the 55 to 60 point range with not great shots and really nothing else to talk about. Not great hits, not great blocks, not great power play time. I don't understand why he's 77% owned. I guess it's similar to. I think I'd rather have John Gabriel Pajot than William Karlsson. At least he's being played on the power play.
That's
Like
a
you're looking at,
that's a take and a half.
and
I mean, I don't disagree, but that is a take and a half.
I mean, I've never really been a big, even on his big breakout season, we were just talking about how William Karlsson is like, okay, he's a player, but he's not somebody I want on my team.
Yeah.
And of course, he proved us wrong that season. But for the most part, like he's not. He's playing less than 50% on the power play. It's dropping even more lately.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, at least Pajot gets hits.
Yeah. I mean, but I think,
that's
like
enough of a difference
I would
maker to
rather
me.
take other centers. Like, I would absolutely try to trade Carlson first for somebody.
Yeah,
I think
Who's
what
still high on him.
I think what I do on Carlson probably is how I've talked about in the past is when everyone is in agreement that a player sucks, right? And that's kind of where Carlson is everyone kind of agrees he hasn't been good, he's not that good, he's not worth trading for. I would target one above a waiver wire spot. Just someone who maybe
Yeah.
was recently picked up, maybe a center, whatever you need, and target that because someone's going to say, oh, well, Carlson is better than whatever I just got on the wire. But the truth of the matter is that it's probably not. It's
He's actually
whatever
like
you know what I mean?
Carlson to me is like a trap card.
Yes.
Like you can trade him to somebody with the intention of if it doesn't work, you drop him for the idea that they will hold him longer than they should, which is kind of funny. It's almost like intentional sabotage.
I know it's weird.
But-
It's just odd. I don't get it. It's
Yeah.
weird.
Although if you drafted him, you'd probably sabotage yourself quite a bit. You're still holding on to him.
Absolutely. So I had a last one here, but you know what? I'm actually going to forego talking about my last player here because honestly, it's not that big of a deal. And instead, I wanted to bring up at the end of the show here one question for you and just for us to discuss, of course, the Leafs. So Morgan Rielly is out for a large chunk of the season here. So what is your new take
He's
on
pretty much
Tyson Barrie?
he's not quite fantasy done, but he's pretty close. He's going to come back in playoffs.
Yeah. So he's almost pretty much, he's going to be someone to pay attention. Maybe if you have a lot of IR spots, it's worth picking him up if someone drops him. But what is your take on Tyson Barrie? My take on Tyson Barrie is he's already been getting the minutes that he's going to be getting. Maybe he gets more 5-on-5 time is what we might see. But I wouldn't be surprised if what we've seen out of Tyson Barrie is who he is. Because he's already been getting the power
I don't
play
necessarily
time.
expect him to get significantly better or anything.
No.
So I mean, he's fine. Whatever.
Yeah. I think
like a 55-ish point guy,
55-ish, maybe 60.
which is great.
Point base. Yeah.
Which is great for a defenseman.
That's
But
great.
It's not gonna get better.
But I think that's an important thing to note because a lot of times, and especially with teams like the Leafs or the Bruins or whatever, when these injuries happen, you see it with Charlie McAvoy a lot too. For example, is Crew goes out for
He
a
never gets
while.
stop power play. It's always freaking Grizzly.
I know, I know, but you know what happens is Crew goes out, and all of a sudden you see all these people asking if they should trade for McAvoy, even though he's not even the one who gets top power play. And the same thing could happen here where Barry's out, not Barry, sorry, Morgan Riley's out, and now you're going to see all these trades start to try to happen for Tyson Barrie. So I would be cautious trading for Tyson Barrie, not because I don't like him, just because the ask could be a little bit too high because they know exactly what you're doing. So just be careful if you do decide to try to go after Tyson Barrie. But I do like it. And there you go. That is the show. Thank you for tuning in. We will be back on Friday, I believe, for the weekend preview. Yes, weekend preview on Friday. And then we'll also have a sit start Saturday and everything else. Also check out our YouTube, Hot Hands, Bus Watches, all that fun stuff. Follow us on Twitter at FantasyHockeyPD and leave a review if you enjoyed the episode. And thanks so much for listening.
Yep. Thanks for listening.